Have you ever been dropped into a completely unfamiliar situation? Maybe a crucial negotiation or, leading a new virtual team, and you suddenly feel totally out of sync.
Oh, yeah.
It's that classic feeling, isn't it, of being a fish out of water.
Hmm.
All the rules you thought you knew, they don't apply anymore.
It's a very human reaction.
It is, but in our globalized economy, that feeling it's a massive professional liability. It can cost you contracts, time, your reputation. Okay, let's unpack this.
We are diving deep into that exact experience today, and, more importantly, we're providing the framework to conquer it. Our source material is David C. Thomas and Kerr Inkson's essential work, Cultural Intelligence.
It's a fantastic book.
It's really a handbook for navigating what they call the global village, which feels more true every day.
And our mission for you, the learner, is pretty simple. We want to distill the core knowledge and skills you need, not just to, recognize cultural differences, that's the easy part, but to actively adjust your behavior to novel circumstances.
And crucially, to forge truly enduring professional and personal bonds with people, regardless of their background.
Exactly.
The book immediately emphasizes the significance of cultural intelligence, or CI, for success. And to really get the stakes, you should visualize this.
Okay.
You are the lead on a major project at a global corporation. Your team is spread across 4 different continents.
Wow, okay.
So you're going to have massive built-in variations in everything.
Sure.
How you make a decision, how you run a meeting, even how you define professional conduct. A lack of CI there, it doesn't just slow things down.
No, it causes fundamental misinterpretations.
Exactly. Or even worse, it makes your colleagues assume bad faith when it was just a cultural clash.
That foundation gives us 2 essential requirements for success right out of the gate. First, you need cultural sensitivity.
Right, the groundwork.
Yeah, the capacity to comprehend that various cultural customs and traditions even exist. It's about accepting your way is not the only way.
And the second component is the active skill, adaptability. Sensitivity is passive. Adaptability is active.
That's a great distinction.
It's not enough to be merely aware. You have to be truly receptive to different cultures. And this enables you to proactively modify your own communication and behavior patterns to meet the situation, rather than expecting everyone else to meet yours.
Right. CI says the burden of communication is on the sender.
Precisely.
That sets the stage beautifully. So let's transition now from why CI matters to what specific knowledge you actually need to build that foundation.
Absolutely. We move now to the crucial need for cultural knowledge.
Right.
And this goes beyond simple facts. It's about understanding the core values, the beliefs, the customs that are sort of the operating system for a culture.
Right.
Acquiring this knowledge simplifies those cross-cultural encounters so much because you can start to anticipate motivations.
But, knowledge of every single culture on Earth is impossible. What's the shortcut here? The critique is always that we need a framework, not just a list of facts. What are the big concepts to keep in our heads?
That's a great point. And instead of memorizing customs, you should understand the spectrums. The most powerful one is the difference between high context and low context cultures.
Okay, break that down for us.
So low context cultures, think North America, Germany, they rely on explicit, straightforward communication. The message is literally in the words.
What you see is what you get.
Exactly. But high-context cultures, like many in Asia or the Middle East, they rely heavily on nonverbal cues, shared history, relationships, implication. The message is in the context surrounding the words.
Give us a concrete example of how understanding that context actually changes an outcome.
Okay, imagine you're at a business conference in Japan, a highly high-context culture. If you know that this culture prefers indirect communication and humility, you'll understand that when a partner says, that might be difficult,
They don't mean it might be difficult.
they mean no, absolutely not. And if you, coming from a low-context place, press them aggressively for a direct yes or no, you come across as profoundly rude.
Confrontational even.
Yes, that simple piece of cultural knowledge lets you promote a cooperative atmosphere. You strengthen the bond, rather than alienating them just by demanding explicitness.
So the practical takeaways here are know the spectrums, like high versus low context, because understanding those underlying values simplifies conversations and helps you avoid those huge cultural mistakes. And the foundational element, respecting differences, is, well, it's just non-negotiable for building effective relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It covers the knowledge component, the map, so to speak.
Yeah.
But as the framework stresses, knowledge isn't enough. You need the skills to apply it in real time when the map is confusing or maybe incomplete.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the focus now shifts from what you know to how you observe and react. It's about mindfulness and cross-cultural skills.
Right. It's about being present, alert, and really engaged.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, mindfulness practices increased your awareness of nonverbal clues, of all the little intricacies in the communication process. We talk about nonverbal, but cross-culturally, it's about reading the silences,
The pauses.
the pauses, the levels of discomfort. If you're truly present, you catch those micro signals that stop you from making assumptions. And that lets you reply correctly, thoughtfully.
That makes so much sense. We're so often just mentally rehearsing our next line that we miss the signal that the other person is uncomfortable or, disagreeing subtly.
Precisely. And this leads us to the critical skill of active listening. It is so critical for good cross-cultural communication to pay attention not just to what people are saying, but how they express it.
The tone, the implied meaning.
The tone, the context. For instance, in a relationship-focused culture, a conversation might spend 30 minutes on family and health before ever touching business. If you interrupt to demand the business agenda, you signal you don't value the relationship, only the task.
And that's a massive missed opportunity right there, all because you weren't listening to the purpose of the conversation. Okay, let's move to the high-stakes environment. CI in action, starting with maybe the biggest friction point in any global project: how decisions actually get made.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material spends a lot of time on decision-making across cultures because norms just deeply affect the process.
Right.
Think about our multinational project team again. In some cultures, maybe ones with low power distance, rapid judgments might be made by a single leader, very efficient.
Top down.
Top down. In other cultures, which prioritize harmony, decisions are made by agreement and require extensive, sometimes lengthy deliberation based on group consensus.
That is such a fundamental difference, especially in today's, rapid-fire corporate world. One side sees deliberation as due diligence, the other sees it as catastrophic inefficiency. So how do we square that circle? If one team needs 3 weeks of consensus building for a decision that has to be made in 3 days, where does CI teach us to compromise? CI teaches us to adapt the process, not just the timeline. The practical lesson here is that adaptability in the decision-making process is essential. You have to be flexible. So if speed is mandatory, you can't just mandate a change of culture. Instead, maybe you change the scope of the decision that requires consensus. Oh, that's interesting. Perhaps the team agrees on the principle rapidly, but the implementation details are left to individual leaders. That way, you respect the need for both speed and collective input.
That's a brilliant way to respect both cultural defaults. Okay, so now we move from internal team decisions to external, often more adversarial interactions, interacting and bargaining across cultural boundaries. Let's say you're negotiating a crucial contract with someone whose culture places an extremely high value on relationship building and, again, indirect communication.
This is truly a risk zone. The consequences of failure here are measured in millions of dollars.
Right. If you are accustomed to an American, straightforward, explicit style of negotiation, where you lay out your bottom line immediately, you might completely overlook crucial, subtle indications from your partner.
Or worse, you appear overly combative.
Exactly, because your directness is perceived as aggressive or even insulting.
So what are the key distinctions we need to know before we even sit down at that table?
The book highlights 2 core differences. First is the difference in cultural communication methods that we just discussed, subtle and indirect versus straightforward and explicit. You have to be prepared to read the room and listen for implied meaning.
So don't push for the explicit no.
Don't push for it if you've already received the indirect message. Pushing only damages the relationship you're trying to build.
And the second distinction?
It's about bargaining traditions. This is critical. Some cultures prioritize rapid, uncomplicated agreements. They want the deal done efficiently so they can move on.
Get her done.
Others prioritize establishing those long-term relationships and mutual trust before any substantive bargaining even begins.
Right. And if you try to rush a relationship-focused culture by, say, demanding they look at the contract terms immediately,
you signal that you see them as a transaction, not a partner. And that's a landmine just waiting to happen. The CI approach dictates that you have to dedicate significant time to socializing, building rapport, finding common ground before you ever pull out a legal document.
the relationship is the foundation of the deal.
It is the deal.
That scalability brings us naturally to management. How does CI profoundly affect the way we lead and motivate people? The next section covers leading and motivating across cultures.
The key realization here is that motivation is, well, it's entirely culturally defined. It's not universal. If you're managing a multicultural staff, you'll find that what motivates someone in one country may be completely demotivating for another. For example, some cultures place far greater value on team cohesion and collective success than they do on individual acknowledgement.
So if I follow my American instincts and I only reward the single top performer of the month with a big public bonus and a trophy, I might actually be demotivating a huge chunk of my team who values group harmony and modesty more than that individual spotlight.
Precisely. That single act can be interpreted not as praise, but as singling someone out and disrupting the collective. It can create envy, not ambition.
So the lesson is,
You need adaptive leadership. This means modifying your default style, whether it needs to be more collaborative or more directive, to fit the cultural context. A high-power distance culture might require more directive instruction to feel comfortable. A low-power distance culture expects to challenge the boss.
there's no one-size-fits-all leadership style in the global village.
Not at all.
Moving on, the source material zooms out to group dynamics, managing multicultural teams and groups. This is where all those individual differences collide. What are the common challenges for a project manager?
The challenges are, well, they're numerous. Variations in expectations about timelines, opposing approaches to problem solving. Is conflict productive or destructive? And wildly different communication styles within the team.
Right.
So if you're the project manager, your job isn't just to establish clear goals, but to proactively establish clear processes for communication and for conflict resolution.
And how does CI help you define those processes?
First, through cultural awareness in teams. The manager has to recognize and validate each team member's unique viewpoint based on their cultural origins. If one culture processes conflict through silent avoidance and another through vigorous debate,
You have a problem.
you have a big problem. The manager has to act as the mediator, the translator, and set ground rules that accommodate both needs.
And second, I assume the focus on effective communication has to be just crystal clear.
It has to be clear, courteous, and deliberately straightforward, especially for objectives and deadlines. While we talked about using indirect communication in a negotiation for team tasks, the manager needs to be extremely explicit to isolate any miscommunications.
To make sure everyone agrees on the path forward, rather than letting implied meanings cause divergence.
Which brings us to the final, crucial step. Developing cultural intelligence in an interconnected world. The fundamental lesson here is that CI is not a status you achieve.
Right, it's not a certification.
No, it's a continuous, lifelong effort. You don't become a cultural chameleon overnight. You become a cultural athlete through constant training.
The path for development is clear and actionable then. You have to actively seek out opportunities to interact with diverse cultural backgrounds.
Not just travel.
No, not just travel, but volunteering, joining diverse groups, taking on international projects. It means engaging in constant learning, reflection, and modeling empathy in your daily interactions.
And the lessons on development are practical. Number 1, never stop learning. Stay inquisitive, be receptive to new cultural experiences, and be prepared to be wrong. A lot.
Assume cultural difference before you assume malice.
That's the perfect way to put it. And number 2, practical application. You have to apply CI in real-world contexts. That's what strengthens the learning and increases your practical experience. You learn by doing, and sometimes by getting it wrong and adjusting.
That was a really comprehensive deep dive. We've covered everything from defining sensitivity in high-context communication to applying those skills in conflict management and adaptive leadership.
The goal really is to move beyond simply surviving diverse environments and start thriving in them.
So what does this all mean for you right now? It means these steps, from acquiring a framework like high-low context, practicing real-time mindfulness, and adapting your leadership style, these are actionable tools. They equip you to handle the unavoidable complexity of the global environment and ensure that the next time you face a cultural difference, you don't recoil, you engage intelligently.
And that leads us to a final, provocative thought for you to carry forward. We learned that decision-making in some cultures demands extensive deliberation and consensus, valuing the process over speed. Meanwhile, many of us default to rapid action and explicit language. This raises an important question.
Okay.
Think about your 3 most common professional interactions this week. How often do your own ingrained cultural assumptions, especially those about time and directness, inadvertently create conflict or tension? Which of your current communication methods would be seen as too combative by a partner who prioritizes that long-term, subtle relationship building above all else?
Start observing your default.
Because that is where CI truly begins.